On the evening of May 18th, 2020, Julie, a mom caring for her 5-year-old, stepped outside her apartment to get some fresh air. As she stood there, her attention was drawn to a nearby pickup truck. Inside, a woman appeared to be in the middle of a heated argument with someone. At first, it seemed like a typical disagreement, but something felt off. Julie's stomach sank when she noticed one of the people in the truck covered in blood. Alarmed and unsure of what was happening, Julie immediately dialed 911. When officers arrived, they found a maroon pickup truck parked in front of a garage. The scene was nothing short of chaos. Personal belongings scattered across the ground, along with an abandoned bag. The driver's side door was slightly ajar, and inside, slumped over in the driver's seat, was a woman. Her seatbelt was still locked, but her body leaned awkwardly toward the passenger side. The inside of the truck was a harrowing mess. Blood coated the doors, the steering wheel, the dashboard, nearly every surface you could see. Her jeans and sweater were soaked in it. But the most haunting discovery was on the ground next to the truck, a set of dentures. The attack had been so savage that it knocked her teeth out. The woman was identified as 47-year-old Tracy Mandabo, a mother of 4 and grandmother to 10. Those who knew Tracy described her as a kind and bright soul, someone who brought joy to everyone around her. But in a tragic twist, Tracy had just arrived at her apartment complex that day, seatbelt still on, when she was brutally attacked in the parking lot. Evidence at the scene told a chilling story of a violent struggle inside the truck. Among the scattered items, investigators found a ripped piece of blue latex glove, a small but potentially vital clue. Detectives traced the truck's registration and made an early breakthrough. The vehicle belonged to Tracy's boyfriend, Nick Boat. As the investigation unfolded, police tied another vehicle to Nick, a silver 4-door Cadillac, which matched the description of a car reportedly seen near the scene of the crime. Investigators tracked the Cadillac to an address linked to Nick's past, one believed to be his ex-wife's home. When officers arrived at the location, they spotted the car parked outside. Its hood and tires were still warm, indicating it had been driven recently. Officers knocked on the door, but no one responded, even though lights glowed from inside. A closer inspection of the Cadillac revealed bloodstains on the passenger side mirror, but the most spine-chilling discovery was on the windshield wiper. A necklace, tangled in the blade. Strands of hair clung to it, twisted and matted, as if frozen in the devastating chaos of that moment. This was just the beginning of unraveling the horrifying truth behind Tracy Mandabo's brutal murder. When officers glanced into the car, they immediately noticed something odd. A chaotic assortment of items cluttered across the passenger seat. Among them were a hammer, a few garden tools, and several sharp objects, all haphazardly tossed together. The scene grew stranger by the minute. 5 minutes passed, yet no one answered the door. The house was eerily silent. But one detail hinted at recent activity. The brake rotors on the Cadillac parked outside were still warm, confirming it had been driven recently. Someone was definitely inside the house, but they were refusing to come to the door. Determined to figure out what was going on, one officer decided to circle around to the back of the house to look for any sign of life. Peering through the bathroom window, he called out to the others, "I think someone's in the bathroom." Moments later, the front door creaked open. Standing there, looking startled, was Michelle Boat. Her expression froze in surprise as she explained she had just gotten out of the shower. She then invited the officers inside. As Michelle sat in the living room answering their questions, other officers began a routine safety check of the house. That's when they noticed the low hum of a washing machine coming from the basement. Inside, they found something curious: a single load of laundry. A jacket, jeans, socks, and underwear. What struck them as odd was that despite dirty clothes being scattered all over the house, Michelle had chosen to wash just this one outfit. Suspicious, right? And the strange details didn't stop there. In the kitchen, a calendar hanging on the wall drew their attention. Starting on March 12th, every single day had been marked with the word "gone." But one date stood out: May 18th. On that square, there was an additional note: 69 days have passed. The detail sent chills down their spines. As it turned out, Michelle and her husband Nick had separated exactly 69 days earlier, and now on this significant day, Tracy Mandibo had been brutally murdered outside her apartment. Which brings us to the bigger question. Who were Nick and Tracy? Nick Boat, 41, and Tracy Mandibo, 47, had only met a few months earlier. Their story began in February 2020, entirely by chance, when Tracy accidentally sent Nick a friend request on Facebook. What started as an accidental connection quickly turned into a conversation, and before long, the two had hit it off. For Tracy, the relationship was like a breath of fresh air. After years of dedicating herself to raising 4 kids and supporting them as they grew into adulthood, she was finally taking time to rediscover herself. But there was a significant complication. Nick still lived with Michelle. According to Nick, their 20-year marriage had been far from happy. He claimed Michelle had never truly loved him, always making him feel like a second choice, as though her heart had always belonged to someone else. On March 11th, things between Nick and Michelle took a shocking turn during a heated argument. Nick admitted he no longer loved her and then dropped an even bigger bombshell. He was seeing someone else. But what seemed like the worst moment was only the beginning of a much darker chapter. The very next day, Michelle stormed into Nick's workplace, creating a dramatic scene in front of his colleagues. The situation escalated as Michelle, overcome with anger, physically attacked Nick. Security had to intervene, and she was eventually removed from the premises. By the following day, Nick had packed his belongings and moved out of their shared home. But for Michelle, the breakup appeared to trigger something far more serious. Her behavior became erratic, obsessive, and alarmingly unpredictable. Within days, she attacked Nick again and blatantly violated a restraining order multiple times. Her harassment quickly turned into direct threats. She began stalking Nick and his new girlfriend Tracy, constantly showing up at places she knew they'd be. Michelle would linger near their favorite spots and sent Tracy chilling, cryptic messages. One read, "Soon you'll see my face in your dreams. Whether your eyes are open or closed, I'll be there." The most unsettling message was a photo Michelle sent of herself sitting at her computer, almost as if to say, "I'm always watching." While Nick tried to brush it off, Tracy was deeply frightened. Hoping to leave the nightmare behind, the couple decided to move to a new home in April for a fresh start. But Michelle wasn't ready to let go. Her obsession only intensified, and she managed to track them down in their new neighborhood. Weeks later, Tracy spotted Michelle tailing her again and reported it to the police. But authorities didn't deem Michelle's actions a serious or credible threat. Tragically, that dismissal would have devastating consequences. The investigation took a critical turn when police executed a search warrant at Michelle's home. This time, they left no stone unturned. A flushing issue in the bathroom caught their attention, leading them to examine the toilet's tank. Inside, they found a white towel. Wrapped within it was a blue latex glove, missing one finger. Forensic analysis later confirmed the glove matched a fragment found at the crime scene. This discovery became the case's tipping point. Detectives charged Michelle with first-degree murder as more evidence began piling up. Strands of Tracy's hair were found inside Michelle's car, alongside bloodstains on the steering wheel and interior upholstery. Michelle's own body carried bruises that pointed to a violent struggle. Each piece of evidence was meticulously documented. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Michelle denied the charges, insisting she was innocent. In court, her defense claimed the crime wasn't premeditated, but the result of uncontrollable rage. They painted a picture of a grieving, emotionally unstable woman driven by the anguish of losing her husband. They argued her actions were born out of passion, an uncontrollable breakdown rather than intent. All of this played out at a time when much of the world was already engulfed in anxiety and turmoil, right in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. It felt like everyone's lives were unraveling in one way or another. For Michelle, that unraveling became complete, spiraling into a tragic story of obsession, heartbreak, and irreversible destruction. After Nick left, Michelle's world fell apart. She spiraled into isolation, sinking into a serious psychological decline. In court, she confessed that, in the 2 weeks following the breakup, she turned to heavy drinking to cope with the pain. By late March, she admitted herself to a mental health facility and stayed there for 5 days. My heart was shattered into pieces. I felt completely destroyed, like my entire life had been ripped away, she shared in court. There would be no more Thanksgivings or Christmases together. He was my everything. Then came a moment that changed everything. Michelle described how she suddenly craved chicken one day and decided to drive to a restaurant. Impatient and irritated, she gave up midway and turned around to head home. That's when she saw it, Nick's truck. Behind the wheel was Tracy, his new partner. In a heartbeat, rage consumed her. But this wasn't just any rage. That truck wasn't just a vehicle. It was a shared purchase, a symbol of her and Nick's life together. Adding to her fury, Tracy was smoking inside, a habit Nick had worked so hard to quit while they were saving for that truck. Unaware of what was about to unfold, Tracy parked in front of her apartment. Michelle followed, stopping nearby, and got out of her car, walking up to her. Michelle later claimed she only wanted to talk. But when Tracy pushed her away, everything escalated. Blinded by anger, Michelle pulled out a knife and stabbed Tracy multiple times. Prosecutors, however, argued this was no heat-of-the-moment crime. The evidence painted a chillingly different story, one of premeditation. Michelle had the knife with her, which they believed suggested she planned the attack. To this day, the murder weapon has never been recovered. Prosecutors alleged Michelle took it home afterward and ran it through her dishwasher to erase any trace of evidence. As the trial unfolded, harrowing details emerged. Witnesses described how Michelle cornered Tracy inside the truck. Tracy screamed for help and struggled, but Michelle didn't stop. In the end, one fatal stab to Tracy's chest ended her life in an instant. Michelle eventually admitted she'd been wearing gloves during the attack. Her reasoning? She claimed it was purely due to the pandemic. Back then, everyone was wearing gloves, she explained. She was also questioned about other items found in her car, such as a hammer, garden tools, and sharp objects. She insisted they were there simply for protection. But the jury wasn't convinced. After just 45 minutes of deliberation, the verdict was unanimous. Michelle Boat was guilty of first-degree murder. In Iowa, the penalty for that conviction is severe: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Michelle will now spend the rest of her life behind bars. In the aftermath, Nick Boat took to social media to apologize to Tracy's family. He expressed deep sorrow and regret over what had happened. However, in a surprising turn of events, just 3 months later, Nick announced his engagement to someone new. In a strange and unsettling way, history seemed to repeat itself. And, of all things, it began with a familiar starting point: a friend request on Facebook.
Before we conclude this video, please be aware that the video on the left may be disturbing. It is recommended for adult viewing only. On the right, you'll find a playlist of videos that have been highly appreciated by our viewers.